this is very different than any breathing technique. I have been researching on breath work, researching on breathing, the effects of breathing for over 22 years, and I haven't yet found the brain gets alert and it says, breathe deeper. So what happens at that moment is, brain wants you to breathe deeper, but your body can't, because you learned a breathing habit. We breath coaches are here for that, to change, to analyze your breathing habits, to see if you have a dysfunctional breathing habit that you don't know of, because you don't know how you're breathing right now until the first session. Have you ever done breath work before? Who has done breath work before? Active, conscious, connected breath work. You have done? No? You have done? Okay, you obviously have done. So for people who haven't done active, conscious, connected breath work before, this is very different than any breathing technique. And for people who haven't experienced any breath coaching session, that's also very different, and I'm going to explain the difference. Okay, so when it comes to breathing, first of all, today what we would love you to understand is, when it comes to breathing, there is no one specific way to breathe for any of us. I have been researching on breath work, researching on breathing, the effects of breathing for over 22 years, and I haven't found the right way to breathe. So I have been doing loads of research. I have worked with over 40,000 people, certified over 2,000 breath workers, worked with all kinds of different techniques, all kinds of breath work practices, transformational breathing, rebirthing, pranayama, breath work healing in Tai Chi and yoga, all kinds of it. And I haven't yet found the best way to breathe. And having said that, we all breathe differently. When you do deep research on breathing, and when you do scientific research on breathing, you see that first, each and every individual has a different breathing habit. And second, there is no right way to breathe. So when we practice certain breathing techniques and certain breath work methods, they will eventually, it's for sure that they will eventually start harming our breathing pattern and start changing our breathing pattern. So the best way, if we want to get conscious of our breathing, so the best way to breathe is by practicing daily breath work and stretching our breath so that our body can breathe in all kinds of different ways. And that's why breath coaching and practicing different techniques is very important, especially for breath awareness and for a healthy breathing habit. So there is no right way to breathe, but there is something called a healthy breathing habit and an unhealthy breathing habit. And we are mainly focused on leading you into a healthier breathing habit. So what's a healthier breathing habit? A healthier breathing habit is all about the individual. When someone can breathe, when your body can breathe in all the ways you can think of, that's a healthy breathing habit. So a stretched breathing is the healthy way to breathe, or not having a dysfunctional breathing habit is a healthy breathing habit. Because like I said, we all breathe different, and like postural habits, we all learn breathing habits. It depends on the way we live, it depends on our thoughts, it depends on other behavior. Since childhood, we all have learned different dysfunctional breathing habits which are affecting our health today. And today we are going to be focusing on analyzing those breathing habits. So today in our workshop in the morning, we will start by analyzing breathing habits, and we will start checking if you have any breathing habits or not. And what I mean by breathing habits, what I mean by dysfunctional breathing habits also changes from people to people. But first, I would like to speak about the symptoms that are caused because of dysfunctional breathing habits and what a dysfunctional breathing habit looks like, or what we call dysfunctional. So a dysfunctional breathing habit is any breathing habit you have learned, like all postural habits, breathing habits are learned, like the way I use my hands, the way I'm standing right now, the way I walk, the way I eat. True for all of us, we learn breathing habits without even realizing we have breathing habits. And a dysfunctional breathing habit is a habit that is not aligned with our respiratory reflexes. What we call dysfunctional in our breathing is something that is not aligned with our respiratory reflexes, and I'm going to explain that in depth right now. Before I move to that, I'm going to give you some basic information about breathing and respiration because of the difference between breathing and respiration, the work we've been doing and the breathwork exercises and breath coaching we've been doing have been very effective because of the difference between breathing and respiration. Many people think that breathing and respiration are the same. When, for example, when it comes to breath work, if you ask people on the street, they will tell you, why would I need breath work? Why would I need to work on my breathing? I'm already breathing, right? People usually say, I'm alive, right? Why do I need a breath work course? I'm alive, right? I must be breathing. Why do I have to practice breath work or breathing techniques? So what they mean over there is respiration. If you are alive, we know that you have it doesn't have to be fully healthy, but you have a working respiratory system. I might say even a healthy respiratory system, because if you didn't respirate, if you didn't have a working respiratory system, you would definitely die. Because respiration is needed for our body to stay alive and for our body to function well. Respiration is a brainstem reflex, like all the systems in our body, like the digestive system, cardiovascular system, like the blood flows in your veins, oxygen or gases come in and out of your lungs with negative pressure, and it happens naturally. It happens, if you are alive, it is already happening. And it happens with the control of your brain. So your brain governs the respiratory system. Respiration is a brain stem reflex. It is governed by the brain, and how respiration happens is I'm going to just briefly explain, and these information will be very useful, especially in your breathing journey, and you will understand why it's so useful to truly understand what respiration is and what breathing is and the differences between respiration and breathing. When you look at respiration, like I said, respiration happens by itself. What I mean by that is that to respirate, I don't have to think about it. Just like your digestive system, you eat and you don't have to think about it or focus or do an exercise to digest. For the respiration, for your lungs to work, you don't have to think about it. It's already working. It's already in place if you're alive. If you're dead, it's not working. But if you're alive, and since you are alive, your lungs are expanding by themselves, contracting and expanding by themselves, and it is happening naturally. And who controls respiration? Your brain. And the best thing is for your brain to control respiration, or for your brain to control the digestive system. When the brain governs the whole body system, the body can stay alive and healthy, and that's why the brain exists. The brain's first job is to keep you healthy and alive. So what the brain does when we think of respiration, the brain have sensors around the body, and because respiration also regulates body fluid pH, and maintaining a certain pH level in the body, which means maintaining a certain chemistry, maintaining a certain pH level, meaning maintaining a stable level in the gases in the body, is very important as a life and death issue, the brain tries to keep our body fluid pH balanced, which is 7.4 pH. The brain's first job is to keep us alive and healthy, and the brain wants to keep our chemistry balanced. And when you look at the body, how is our body fluid pH regulated? It is regulated by our respiration. The brain has sensors around the body, and those sensors check the gas levels second by second. Like every millisecond, the sensors, millions of sensors around the body, checks pH levels and the gases, what's happening in the body, oxygen levels, carbon dioxide levels, other gases, and tries to keep the body fluid pH balanced. And it does keep it balanced by regulating respiration. That's why, for example, when you're doing professional sports, when you're practicing professional sports, for example, if you're running, playing tennis, in a match, you start breathing real deep and fast. Why? Respiratory reflexes are there, kicking in, because your body is producing too much lactic acid, there is too much acidity, respiration leads, so the brain sends basically, of course it's much more evolved, but basically the brain sends signals to the diaphragmatic muscles and tells the diaphragm to work deeper, to work more. That's why you start breathing deeper, so that you can get in more oxygen, and the respiratory chemistry can go alkaline and balance the acidity in your body so that you don't die. So for example, imagine you have a dysfunctional breathing habit and you learned to breathe shallower than most people. So think of it as from childhood and on, you learned a breathing habit that leads the diaphragm from expanding. You are not fully using your diaphragm. You learned a breathing habit of not fully using the diaphragm. And you learned a breathing habit and you're keeping your breath shallower than usual people or than healthier people. So what happens when you're doing sports? You will probably not be a professional sports person because you won't be able to breathe deep when the respiratory reflexes kick in. So what happens? If you have a dysfunctional breathing habit, for example, a shallow breathing habit, and you're doing sports and you're running and your body is producing too much lactic acid, your brain sends signals to the diaphragm and says, breathe deeper. Because there is too much acid in the body, you will die from acidity. People die from acidity, or if you go too alkaline or too acidic, you die. So the brain gets alert and it says, breathe deeper. And then imagine the respiratory reflexes. With the respiratory reflexes, the brain in control, it wants us to breathe deeper. And imagine you have a dysfunctional breathing habit and you learn not to breathe deeper. So what happens at that moment is, brain wants you to breathe deeper, but your body can't, because you learned a breathing habit. So in that instant, what happens is you stay acidic and you start experiencing all kinds of respiratory acidosis, and you have to sit down, you can't exercise anymore, your heart beats fast, you feel like you're gonna faint because there's too much acidity, and you need time to get back to your normal self, so you stop the exercise. You stop whatever you're doing, because if you continue, you can even faint because of acidity. And it happened because you learned, like postural habits, to shallow down the breath, to not to use the diaphragm. And there are a lot of people who, learned not to fully use the diaphragm since childhood. There are a lot of people right now, in the session, when I tell them to breathe from the diaphragm, use the diaphragm, expand the belly, they just can't. Because they learned a breathing habit of not using the diaphragm, so when the respiratory reflexes kick in, they don't, and they have a lot of symptoms. They experience a lot of symptoms due to that. So when we work with people who have shallow breathing habits, who are not using the diaphragm, we analyze their breathing habits, see that they are not using the diaphragm, and we lead them in the session to use the diaphragm. And with them, we practice diaphragmatic breathing. And with them, we practice deep breathing. That's just one example. And then I'm going to give you another example, which is the opposite. The opposite, imagine someone who learned using the diaphragm more than they should as a breathing habit, because that's also a dysfunctional breathing habit. Imagine someone who learned a deep breathing habit, and there are a lot of reasons, and if you want to know about the reasons, come to the breathwork certification, breath coaching certification program, which they are in. And we teach you all kinds of breathing habits and why people learned, because all dysfunctional behavioral habits are learned with a motivation. So the reason why people learn dysfunctional breathing habits is to get some results. It may be, creating an alternative self, boosting self-confidence, boosting the ego consciousness, but it's mainly creating an alternative reality. So the main reason why people change their breathing since childhood and learn breathing habits is to disconnect from themselves. The first reason is to disconnect from ourselves and create an alternative self. And that happens because we get conditioned to ideas like people should do this, people should do that, people should behave this way, people shouldn't behave this way. So we found a way to disconnect from ourselves, which is the reason why we learn dysfunctional breathing habits, but that's another topic, not a topic for today. So imagine, let's get back to the individual who learned a dysfunctional breathing habit or breathing too deep. So what happens with that? Our body, Bridget is here, our bodies need, to stay healthy and well, need all kinds of breathing. During the day, if I analyze someone who have a healthy breathing habit, which means a stretched, healthy breathing habit, I'm going to find out that they are breathing in all the ways. During the day, for example, when I'm talking, when I'm standing up, I am using my diaphragm more than I'm sitting up and not talking. For example, when I'm exercising, I'm using my diaphragm even more. When I'm resting at home, I stop using the diaphragm. I use less and less diaphragmatic breathing. The breath shallows down, and while I'm going to sleep, I start breathing from the chest. So we use all kinds of breathing throughout the day, and what a healthy breathing habit looks like, how a healthy breathing habit looks like, is when someone can use all kinds of breathing, and when someone doesn't have dysfunctional breathing habits. The problem is having those habits first, and the second, not even knowing that you have a dysfunctional breathing habit. And in the end, what happens is you experience over 200 symptoms that are well known in respiratory science books. There are 200 symptoms of dysfunctional breathing habits: migraine, headaches, panic attack, attention deficit problems, ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, all kinds of mood swings. Also arrhythmia in the heart, hypertension, and many more. Over 200 well-known symptoms of dysfunctional breathing habits that are taught in medical school. So now every 2-3 years, I go and do a seminar to a big bunch of doctors, cardiologists, and respiratory specialists, and I haven't yet met anyone when I am on stage and say there are over 200 symptoms of dysfunctional breathing habits, and you know them. I haven't met one doctor who said, no, there aren't. Because they do learn in medical school that there are over 200 symptoms of dysfunctional breathing habits. The problem is, because there are other reasons of those symptoms, somehow the medical world forgot to check our breathing before they do anything else. Before they give you a pill to manage your migraine, they forgot to check your breathing. But headaches and migraine is a well-known symptom of hypocapnia, which is high oxygen levels, low carbon dioxide levels. That happens because of a dysfunctional breathing habit. And doctors do know that, but they somehow don't pay attention. And I am here for them to pay attention, and that's basically why we do seminars and I give speeches and I do talks to a bunch of doctors to at some medical congress or something around the world. They somehow forget. This is a well-known thing. Like they have been taught this at school. But the thing is, where breath coaching comes into the picture is, no one does anything to change our breathing behavior so that we do not experience all those symptoms. And we breath coaches are here for that, to change, to analyze your breathing habits, to see if you have a dysfunctional breathing habit that you don't know of, because you don't know how you're breathing right now until the first session. Then you start experiencing, like my first session I was a shallow breather. I had no idea I was breathing shallow, but I was having some energy problems and I was feeling depressed and I couldn't do sports like I used to when I was in my 20s. I was really thin and, like low energy, low self-confidence, and everything was low and shallow in my life. I didn't know why, and I didn't know that I was breathing shallow. In my first breathwork session with a professional breath coach, when he analyzed my breathing and told me to breathe deep, at that moment I realized I couldn't. He was telling me throughout the whole session, he was telling me to breathe deep, and I wasn't able to. I was taking the deepest breaths of my life, like really breathing deep. It felt like I was literally cracking into half, and he was still saying, "You're still breathing shallow, too shallow." So I was taking the deepest breaths ever, and I just couldn't do that because it was a learned breathing behavior, and it took me around 8 to 10 sessions to get to a fully relaxed, deep breathing habit. Because my breathing habits was learned, in over 20 years. This was when I was in my 20s, but it was learned in over 20 years. So how can I change it in just one session? That's why we need breath coaching and we need daily, regular breathwork practice. You need to keep on practicing with different techniques and with different methods so that you can breathe. Your body can learn to breathe in a more healthier way. So this is only one example, and if I get back to another example, like the example I gave, someone who learned deep breathing habit, who's using the diaphragm, there are a lot of overbreathers in the world right now. And overbreathing causes hypocapnia, leads to hypocapnia, and there was a research in New York in over 500 hospitals, and they realized that over 70% of people who called 911 and who went to the emergency was there because they were hypocapnic. They didn't have any other symptoms. They were just hypocapnic. What they did was, when they came to the emergency, they used capnographs and they checked their breathing habit, and they realized these people were just overbreathing. Some of them were having anxiety attacks, panic attacks. Some of them, fainted. Some of them had serious other issues that looked serious but were only due to dysfunctional breathing habits. 70% of people who were in the emergency, and that's huge. Just imagine how many symptoms you are experiencing during the day that is because of your dysfunctional breathing habit. It's crazy. I haven't used any medicine, any pills, anything over 20 years. It's crazy what happens with dysfunctional breathing habits. And I had migraine and headaches and backache and shoulder ache, this and that, gone. My mom had chronic migraine. She would have it like 3 times a week, horrible, gone. Like my other friends, they had thyroid problems, gone. You know, knee problems and shoulder, back, and psychological problems, and they were getting, you know, Xanax every day, done. So how you can invest in your health by investing on your breath is limitless. So today, I would like to initiate that. Like I would like to initiate the importance of paying attention to your breath, the importance of practicing breathing every day, the importance of practicing breath work every day, the importance of course, you came here, we are going to analyze your breathing, but the importance of keeping, you know, that practice in place, like analyzing your breathing habit every couple of months, checking how you breathe, doing exercises to become aware. Because right now, if this is your first session, for example, you probably have no awareness around how you're breathing. You probably have, because that's where we start. I started there, everybody starts there. You probably have, that was my experience as well, you probably have no awareness about how you're breathing, and you have no idea what that kind of breathing is, how that kind of breathing is affecting your life. And the first couple of sessions, you're going to realize that, wow, this is the way I breathe, and this is causing all these symptoms. It's amazing, and that's why, and our breath coaches will help you understand that. Like, they're going to analyze your breathing habit through the session. They are going to help you move away from that breathing habit and breathe differently. If you're breathing shallow, they're going to tell you to breathe deep. If you're using the diaphragm too much, they're going to tell you to relax. If you're not using the diaphragm at all, they're going to tell you to use it. If you're only breathing in the chest, they're going to tell you to breathe in the diaphragm. If you're breathing fast, they're going to tell you to breathe slow. So we're going to ask you to do the exact opposite thing of what you're doing right now, because that's how behaviors change. That's how a learned breathing habit, that's how a learned behavioral habits change. So that's going to be how that's the way the session will look. And again, when I go back to the example, if someone is over breathing, what we do is we lead them into shallowing down the breath. Someone who learned an over breathing habit probably are having a hard time relaxing. They probably have symptoms like sleep apnea. They probably have breathing issues throughout the day. They probably have anxiety, panic attack, arrhythmia. So there are all kinds of issues due to doing a certain thing throughout the whole day. While our body needs all of it. Our body needs shallow breath as much as deep breath. Our body needs slow breath as much as fast breath. Our body needs diaphragmatic breathing as well as chest breathing. So if someone comes up to you and says the right way to breathe is from the diaphragm, they freaking have no idea, and they are not talking scientific at all. That's just pseudoscience and nonsense. Because diaphragmatic breathing is not the best way to breathe. Diaphragmatic, yes, we do need diaphragmatic breathing sometimes throughout the whole day, but if you're breathing from the diaphragm throughout the whole day, you will definitely become a very stressed individual. You might experience problems like MS, muscle problems, knee problems, pain in the body, too much stiffness, anxiety, panic attack, because breathing in the diaphragm throughout the whole day leads to all kinds of symptoms. So it's not the right way to breathe. It is one way to breathe, and we use diaphragmatic breathing sometimes during the day. Not all the time. If it's all the time, we have a problem, and that needs to change. So what we're going to do, I'm going to explain, and our breath coaches will also explain. So our breath coaches will start by telling you their stories, so that you get inspired from their stories as well. Then we are all going to lie down. Throughout the session, we are going to be lying down with bent knees, closed eyes, we are going to give you some little device, gadget, to put in between your teeth so that you can breathe in and out from the mouth. So the first rule to this session, we're lying down with bent knees. The second rule, we are going to be breathing through the mouth throughout the whole session. The third rule, you are going to focus on, this is very important, because this is a conscious connected breathwork session. We use conscious connected breathwork to achieve what we're trying to achieve, not because conscious connected breathwork is the right way to breathe, not because you should breathe that way throughout the whole day, to reach our goals. So third, what I want you to do is consciously connect the inhale and exhale. No pauses before the inhale, no pauses before the exhale, and you're going to imagine a circular movement, and it's going to sound like this. So it's not going to be like this. What I mean by consciously connecting the inhale is no pauses before the inhale and exhale. So connecting the inhale and exhale, because that will help you to create an electromagnetic field around you, and it will increase your vibration so that the lower energy frequencies will transform and help you transform any dysfunctional habit, thinking habit, breathing habit throughout the whole session.